that we were always involved in a way in my parents' occupation. Like the four of us, we were always around. It was a way to, I think, it was a way to learn about work in many senses, like learning about working with other people, and also acknowledging the value of other people's work. Many of those people who work with my mother, for example, they were single mothers. They had lots of challenges back home, and of course they brought it to work. So it was also like a way to understand the sort of diversity of backgrounds, of needs, of what people do in their lives. I think this is I think those initial work experiences with my parents, I think they helped me realize many of those things of social life.
What you've been working on is identifying the differences in how makerspaces are approached in different countries and different cultures.
Much of the practices remain connected to a view of making, which is very U.S. centric, and it has a lot to do with the ethos of the Silicon Valley, and it's connected to things like 3D printers or laser cutters, which are not accessible to many segments of the population worldwide. However, on the other hand, they have many cultural practices that are super valuable. They are they are phenomena that happen for generations, and they can be inducive to learning. So you're kind of adding the cultural relevance of those social cultural practices with learning, and this is something that happens in every community. Every community has their century-old practices, their expressions, and everything. And what we're proposing with this line of research is looking at those communities and see how making happens, how maker education might happen in a way that is different from the mainstream view of maker education that is connected to that Silicon Valley ethos of making. And we found this in these communities, especially the one in India, that making with found materials found in their communities. In that case, for example, old bicycles or old bicycles. I think it's a good example. How those practices of repurposing materials were connected to emancipation, or to learners being able to imagine different futures from those that are imposed to them by broader social political structures. There was a washing machine that was powered by pedals, pedaling, and that was different than that was more effective than washing clothes by hand, and that allowed girls to go to school instead of putting time in household chores, basically. So that was life changing for many of those kids. Some of those girls, some of those kids were the first to attend college in the village. Some of those kids who went to those maker spaces, like these local maker spaces.
I just would love to hear like what is your research focusing on and what angle you're taking to combat disinformation.
We understand that it's not that people have an empty head and then they see fake news and all the fake news invade their heads, their empty brains, and influence them. Those people, we understand that there are learning processes involved in how people are exposed to this information, and those cognitive processes are easy to be downplayed by prejudice that we might have against certain groups. For example, it's easy to say just that some people are simply dumb, or some people don't get it. it's easy to take that stance. But I think as educators, as learning scientists, I think we have a role to understand what's going on, what are the underlying processes happening when people consume and redistribute this information.